when you've had clients where they've gone from sort of a dead standstill of no reviews and they finally sort of launch reviews, any idea what the typical lift in conversion rate would be as a result of adding the reviews and the social proof?
Yeah, so we've seen on average a lift of like 26%.
Wow.
And that's going from like 0 to like 100 essentially reviews. Because also with Google, for Google to start like indexing those, you have to hit like a certain amount. And we really see that big pull, especially because conversion rating on Google, when you search something and you see that star rating right on that product, that's going to go to your eye and you're gonna go look at it essentially. And so that's really going to help your path to purchase, as well as it's going to help the conversion rate increase just because of social proof.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Christina Kay, who's VP of Marketing at ResellerRatings. And so thanks so much for joining me, Christina. First thing, not everyone knows what ResellerRatings is. So what's the elevator pitch? What does ResellerRatings do?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. At ResellerRatings, we amplify the voice of millions of shoppers by helping thousands of retail brands power and integrate their shoppers or customers, whatever you want to call it, voice through our holistic suite of UGC solutions.
Great. Well, some marketers are really scared about UGC. It's like they're like, no, it's user generated. I don't want to deal with that. But obviously, from a content diversity perspective, it's great, and from a social proof perspective, it's
and
great.
Cost.
Cost, yeah, of course. So what do you think they're so scared of? What is it that you find that you have to say to these marketers to sort of get them to realize, like, listen, it's okay. UGC is powerful.
Yeah, so UGC for me, like I can definitely understand where people can feel scared with it, because really it could be, especially if you're like in brand marketing, you could have this like, oh crap, they're not going to be completely what we want our brand to be. But if they're not that ideal brand person that you have in mind, that's a new target market. And then that UGC could really help you, even the negative stuff can help you see what you need to work on and see where you really could improve your products, improve your website. But then also, obviously, with UGC, you can really get that group of champions for your brand and then really highlight them a lot, just because like everybody likes to be liked. Let's be real. And especially on social media with like millennials and like Gen Z and younger generations and even older generations, if a brand that they liked their post or commented on it, that makes them feel good, and then they're going to buy more from you. And that's just the name of the game with that. And with UGC, it's super important to really hold those customers dear to you, even if it's a negative experience, because you can win them back by helping them get to a better experience, especially if they're doing that on a rating or review on your product.
Right. I hadn't really thought about it, but when you describe it that way, it's like reviews are like a gigantic focus group, which of course brands are used to having those behind closed doors and like nobody gets to see, but it's a public version of a focus group. And so it has, marketing research implications. It has CRM, customer relationships, social media implications. So, they may be looking at it through too small of a lens, really, if they're only thinking about it as UGC reviews.
Yep, exactly. Because it really can help build a community around your brand. And being in, yes, I'm in the B2B space, but our customers are like D2C, B2C. Having a community is important no matter what space you're in, because ultimately we're marketing to humans, no matter who you really are. And having that community, especially with just how the world is right now, is super important. And UGC can be that factor for you with that.
So I know that in the B2B and B2C world, people may look at ratings and reviews differently. When you look at it, the ecosystem through your lens, sort of how would you really differentiate the way ratings and reviews are used in a B2B context versus a B2C context?
Yeah. So with B2B, I mean, they are similar in the sense of how is your experience and the star ratings. Like there are similarities with that. But I would say the biggest differentiators on that are normally with B2B, you are rating their company or their like product as a whole.
Mhm.
And on the B2C side, yes, there are brand reviews, so you are rating it as a whole. But that bigger factor, that's a bigger player in the game, is those product reviews. And that is the differentiator in my mind, because on B2B, you think G2, and you go to G2 or you go to Captora or you go to Trust Radius, things like that, to go see like where you should buy your marketing technology from, things like that. And on our side of the gamut per se, it's really, yes, you go to like reseller ratings, or yes, you can go to our competitors, but if you just Google search like Zenny is one of our customers, and you would write Zenny reviews, you would see their reviews, and you would see like even their power pages called essentially of all of their reviews coming from reseller ratings. And it would also say where it is coming from, if it's coming from a competitor as well. And so it's very transparent. And I feel like that's the two big differences in the sense of reviews, because of that star rating. That's it's called the Google Seller Ratings program that B2C is really part of. And on that B2B side, it's more of the holistic whole brand review versus specific product or like t-shirt per se.
Right. Are sometimes people in both cases or in both scenarios responding to a specific experience? I guess it's easier to stimulate a negative review than it is a positive one. And so
Yeah.
is it sort of a one way that you see sort of instant feedback from a customer if they have a bad person to person experience as opposed to person to brand, right? Because sometimes it's an individual that creates the catalyst for the review as opposed to the actual product, the actual brand. And so do you see differences in the way people articulate their issue or concern when it's sort of a bad personal experience, where it's two people having a relationship versus a brand or product and a buyer?
Yes. And I think too, like with those types of reviews, you can really kind of read through them essentially. But with the big rise of like a personalized stylist online, that obviously will play into the review. And I would say obviously there could be negative experiences with that, you know, and it could be either way or amazingly positive. I know I've had really great experiences with that, especially during COVID. But it's a in the terms of like reviewing a person per se, that would probably be on the brand review side of it, even on B2C, because when you're reviewing a product, yes, the person could say, I want a star because Christina said that it would look really good on me and it didn't. You know, like they'd be like, okay, like, you know. And with that being said, like even that review that's like how many words, like 6 words or something, that for us, like we have a higher minimum word or like character count than a lot of our other competitors, just because that value in the review, like instead of saying it's cool, like that gives you nothing. You know, you're like, what can I do with this? Exactly. You know, it's like a 13-year-old just like went through and did them all. You know, it's like, so cool, this is awesome, you know, and that doesn't give you anything. Because for me, I really like looking into them, even like me as like a consumer, seeing the scales of like true to size, fits large, just right, or fits small, things just right. I feel like that's Goldilocks. It's like that's the way I said that. It sounds like a nursery rhyme. But it just like really depends on the product. And I feel like having things like that really help the consumer. And then the other thing with that is not, and we didn't even touch on this yet, and we kind of did with like social proof and things like that, but videos and images with your reviews are important, and they almost have to have them or they won't be impactful, especially with Google now indexing videos and so many things with that. Because like with our platform, for instance, someone could have a review of the glasses they brought from Zennies. Like for instance, my mom loves Zennies and she she posts all her videos and stuff like that when she has her Zenny's glasses on, and they show a real human, like, and you can say, okay, I look like them, but then also those brands can use those images for ads or for different things on their Instagram. And that's a really cool factor, because then you're even part of that community and kind of going back into that like focus group that we were talking about.
Right. I think, they're so ubiquitous, reviews and ratings these days, whether it's, on Amazon or on an independent site or on a reseller site. That I think consumers get nervous if they show up and they don't see any reviews, right? So there's zero social proof. And so, when you've had clients where they've gone from sort of a dead standstill of no reviews and they finally sort of launch reviews, any idea what the typical lift in conversion rate would be as a result of adding the reviews and the social proof?
Yeah, so we've seen on average a lift of like 26%. Wow. And that's going from like 0 to like 100 essentially reviews. Because also with Google, for Google to start like indexing those, you have to hit like a certain amount. And we really see that big pull, especially because conversion rating on Google, when you search something and you see that star rating right on that product, that's going to go to your eye and you're going to go look at it essentially. And so that's really going to help your path to purchase, as well as it's going to help the conversion rate increase just because of social proof.
Wow. So over anything 20%, like that's a serious lift in conversion rate. So, if somebody's coming on board and they sort of have to get those, ratings and reviews primed, like, are there any best practices to sort of getting momentum there from a dead standstill?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to collect those reviews, and you can do it in the sense of like right after the purchase. And it's like more about the brand experience versus the product. So that can help get a review in. And then having triggers within your system that when that product is delivered. And then like maybe the next day or so, you can send an email or SMS message saying like, hey, like how does it look? How do you like feel in it? Things like that. And that can help get that review count up. And obviously a lot of brands do like, they try to do like incentives, and there's certain things you can, and there's certain things you cannot do, obviously, because you don't want a review that is, brands can't pay for reviews. That's like completely not okay. But some brands are like, hey, I'll give you 10% off if you review this thing. There are certain things that there's limitations, and brands will know this just based on the rules with Google Seller Ratings. But there are ways to really help increase those reviews, and there are ways that you should definitely not do that.
Right. Are there any cases where, offline customer service reps encourage reviews to be left, or maybe the on hold messaging when you're on the toll-free support line? I guess that's probably a bad place to ask for them, because the person probably has a problem. But certainly the reps could ask, because I know that they like to get feedback at the end of any customer service now. There's
especially like chat conversations.
Exactly, right. So I'm wondering if there are any examples where people have used that effectively to sort of increase the number of reviews that they're getting.
Yeah. So there is an example. I can't say what client this is of ours or customer, but what our product also does is kind of get in front of the situation if it is a negative experience. And then we send that to the customer, and then they can like reach out one-on-one or publicly to say something to that like their customer to kind of make their experience better. So that is a way to really kind of reroute somebody. But I also think that, like you said, in the sense of calling customer service, things like that, in my mind, even if it is, I'm angry calling, just start. If the conversation is good, I'm not like worried that they're going to ask for me to like review them, because I already will, because it was a good experience for me, and that was before I was in this space, just because I feel like there's going to be more people who will be like, oh my gosh, I had a great experience with Jamie and I'm going to email corporate. Like, you know, and
Right.
I think that's super important. And yes, it's not technically a review that would be like on their website or on an ad or a product, but that still will help the brand essentially, because then they're going to have an advocate, which then once they get a product, they'll review it and it'll help that experience along.
Well, clearly, consumers have an expectation that reviews aren't manipulated. So I'm sure there are best practices that your team uses and perhaps the industry at large to make sure that reviews are legitimate.
Yep.
Without going into any trade secrets, how do you guys make sure that the reviews are legit?
Yeah. So we have on our team, we do have like flaggers per se. Not that's not like their title, but part of their thing is flagging reviews that are spam. And a lot of the times you can tell by the email address. It's pretty simple with that part. And then another factor that's a super big factor that I don't see a lot of brands doing, but some brands do it depending on how they're asking for the review, is having someone put the order number in. And with like different emails, you can have that be like a token, obviously, that they don't realize that it's going to that order essentially. Right. Yeah. But you can do it that way to really legitimize the review. And obviously too, increasing the count of characters or words on a post for it, and then requiring photos or videos or something like that if you're really going down that line, because that's going to help to make sure that that review is legitimate.
Yeah, that's a great point. That generally a bot is not going to generate a video, right? Or even take pictures.
No,
so
not yet.
Not yet. Exactly. So, Christina, I think I remember reading somewhere that perfect reviews are actually suspicious to consumers, even though brand managers may be, striving for excellent. They want the 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 4, whatever the maximum rating is. But for authenticity, I think consumers are looking for a balanced set of reviews. What's your thinking there?
Yeah, that's definitely true, because anybody, if you see 4,000 5-star reviews, you're like, I don't know about that, because there's no way that it's perfect, and essentially, right. So having that mix is super important, and some brands are like scared of that. It's kind of that mindset of being scared of UGC. It's vulnerable, essentially, but it really depends on how you react. If you respond to those reviews trying to make their experience better, or if it's a legit just learning experience that the shirt is made in a crappy way, like that is something then you can bring back to your manufacturer. Or if it's a shipping problem, there's so many things that even us as our brand, we can do to help our customers. Like, for instance, if it is like a shipping issue, we have shipping partners that we can refer them to, saying hey, or if it's a website thing, we can reach out to an agency that I know and say, hey, they're having some website optimization issues. Can you maybe help them out, and do an intro that way, showing that for us, that we really care. And then also that we care about their customers, because if their customers are happy, they'll be more happy with us, and that will make everybody happy.
Right. Yeah. One thing I've noticed is sometimes people seem to, I guess it's just a picky consumer type, but they seem to sort of skip the standardized rating and reviews process and go to social media. Particularly if they're venting frustration, right? So do you also recommend,
especially Twitter,
have sort of teams monitoring the various social platforms to sort of intercept, any reviews that are showing up there or ratings that are showing up there?
Yes, I think it's really important for brand reputation management. It's definitely part of the social team that I've seen a lot of places to really, and there's a lot of software that you can just easily crawl, essentially, that these softwares are doing, that you get those mentions, and you can do different trigger words. And there's AI now that you can say if it's angry, yellow green, like a red alert, purple is really bad or something. I don't know how you would set it, but it's different things that you can do to get to it quicker. And obviously I'm not saying that someone needs to be on this 24/7, because we all have lives, but it is important to have someone on it in the hours that you can be without going too crazy.
Great. So you mentioned earlier about incentivizing reviews, and obviously you can't incentivize positive reviews or try to guide people, but I have seen folks creatively sort of include a request for a review with a, by the way, here's a discount, even if it's not a quid pro quo. So are there any best practices as to sort of how to create the warm fuzzies in your communications so that the people are perhaps a little bit more inclined to, maybe round up a half a star if they're going to be rating or a review?
Yeah. So I think like not knowing what the incentive is going to be better for the brand integrity, as well as just really learning about your customer. And so having that, like they do a review and it's like, oh, thank you. You have reviewed us 25 times now. Like you're one of our top reviewers, like things like that. And for me, I don't think always offering discounts is the best way to do it, because some people don't really care about that. But also it could take steps down essentially of like what your brand is, and like that product. People have a very different point of view on that. And I think certain brands definitely should do that, but some don't really need to.
Right.
But also I always call it, and this is something that I'm like working out right now that I'm actually possibly doing a podcast on, but it's called like brand love languages. And everybody, like as people, we all have different love languages, but as consumers, we do as well. Like one person who wants a discount is not the same person who maybe wants like a swag sticker from the brand. It's maybe there's like different things, or like in a personalized sales call with a stylist, like there's certain things that brands can do to really make their experience better, which then essentially will get their UGC and their rating reviews really so personalized to that experience that people will feel like they were part of that experience. And I think that's the way to go about it, because meeting people where they're at and meeting people like where they want to be thanked, per se.
Right. Now it's interesting. You got me thinking about different categories, right? So obviously beauty and cosmetics and fashion, those are industry categories where people have more of an emotional connection to the brand. And of course, in some cases, outside of that category, you'll also see really strong connections to the brand, like Apple users, tend to really be connected, and Harley Davidson owners are so enamored with their brand, they tattoo it on themselves, right? So you obviously have all different levels of passion for brands, but not every brand is in a high passion category, breakfast cereal or, pudding or, laundry detergent, right? So when you're not in a highly emotional category, should you treat your, process of interacting with your consumers around ratings and reviews differently than you would if you're in a highly emotional category?
I don't think so, because even when you bring up like laundry detergent or even like toothpaste, toilet paper, like those are things that people need, like those are things that are needed. And so that's even like a deeper emotional connection, I feel, in the sense, because it's almost like the hierarchy of needs essentially of brands. And those are the things that like you need, so it could be like a baby has sensitive skin and they switch their detergent and now it's cleared from, like, like those stories from like moms, from that could be so great for the brand. Right. And that's even for like toothpaste. Like you could really do that for any type of non quote unquote like sexy or cool, like you would think in a sense brand, but like I feel like when it comes to the higher like fashion and things like that, those reviews are not, if you go to any like really big luxury sites too, there's not a lot of reviews on their products, and like essentially could be because not many people can afford it, but reading through those stories are super important too, because you can see if it's someone's like first luxury handbag, or you can see if someone bought this when they like passed their bar, like things like that are really things to consider when you are creating your UGC ratings or reviews plan, because instead of being scared of it, just think of the opportunities that can come from it, and then the stories. And even if it is toilet paper, or even if it is like a $3,000 bag, there's a story that's behind that of the why, and getting to that and figuring out what they love about it, but then also what makes them feel good about it and makes them feel like they are connected is super important.
Right. That's a great point. With regards to pre-existing DTC companies, certainly they've got their email lists and perhaps a pretty good social media
SMS.
footprint,
I got a lot
right?
of SMS this past week. I got a lot.
Yeah. And then certainly, at the retailer level, again, they've got that email address list. They've got the other PII that they can reach out to existing customers and perhaps ramp up reviews pretty quickly. But if you don't have the direct consumer connection to be able to sort of figure out how to populate, your reviews, or it's a new product, right? And it's sort of the brand exists, but the product is new. Any other tips as far as how to accelerate getting those reviews in there quickly so that you can build the social proof?
Yeah. So obviously it's really how you highlight that product on your site, just so more eyes can see it. But also just if you have if you have a community, or if you don't, and you have a set of people, maybe like friends and family or something, that can try it out and give you like that focus group type of like mindset. And then their like thank you gift or something is like they can keep the product or something, and then they talk about it, and then those people can be part of that community that like buys the product and then reviews the product. And I feel too like a lot of people don't know how to write a review. And so brands like us, which like I'm creating this kind of like certification-ish kind of program for the consumer and the brands of like how to teach people like, or what's a really good review, what's not a good review, like what's helpful, what's not, things like that. Cause I feel like that's super important. Cause for me, sometimes I can say everything is great, and everything is hunky-dory with this product and awesome, great, and all these things and a story, but then it doesn't, yes, it's all that positivity, but it doesn't give that that functionality. And I feel like that's super important to put in reviews, especially when it is if it's a clothing item, a computer, like everything. If you talk about the functionality of how it helped improve your life, or it made your life worse, like, both of those are going to help.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always liked about ratings and reviews, even though sometimes you wince at the grammar or you wince at the review itself, is from an SEO perspective, right? It creates keyword diversity, and it creates content diversity that you might not otherwise get. Of course, there's also a little bit of a double-edged sword in that a competitor might be mentioned in a review, right? Because a person may want to contrast something. And so from an SEO perspective and from a social media perspective, do you feel like the reviews become a really strong tool?
It's huge for SEO. And that's actually one thing that our sales team talks a lot about with different like prospects. And even when we're talking with our customers about enhancing their solutions, like with us, is that SEO factor. It's so big, especially in e-commerce. It helps incredibly. The amount of impressions that we have on our site for specific brands, just like brand name and review or like red dress review, is huge. And that's like, those are terms that have a lot of like search value, and or volume. And I feel people don't think about that a lot, in the sense of the search factor. And you mentioned the competitor side, but this is the part that I love. And me and my CEO talk about this a lot, especially when we create like competitive pages for us, is if you do it well, and if that person's reviewing that product on your page and that link is to you and they mention the competitor, okay, they can click it, but they're still going to be on your page. And then at that point, you can still like essentially retarget, and like, get them to that if they don't like convert. But having competitors on different products is negative and positive. Like, it could be like, oh, I bought this, Contigo thermos and it was amazing. I didn't like my blankety blank blank blank. Like that could be something that also is, oh, like I could be like, oh, like, yeah, I didn't like my blank brand, but I love what it says about this thermos, so I'm going to go that way too. You know, I feel like it's a benefit, but also people could think about it negatively. But I think in the sense of the customer's voice and UGC, it's all for a positive push, because negativity can really help you get your ego away. And sometimes, yes, I know you don't want to say like your baby's ugly. And I'm not saying literally, but your brand, you know, or your product. But it's needed, you know, especially if you haven't had like a brand facelift, or you haven't changed or looked at different manufacturers, because that's even a whole other conversation with like pricing and that, and like where they get the product. Like there's so many things that go into that people don't like think of when they're just like shopping, and having that perspective. If someone's really, say most of your audience cares about like fair trade and things like that, but then your product's coming from somewhere else, like that could be a big issue. And so you could think that and figure out how to budget in a way to really come at that for your true core of customer, or that commerce community that you have.
Right. Yeah, I think in the part of that point that you're really reinforcing is also the authenticity, right? Is the fact that there's potentially a competitive mention, which could go either way. It could go, you know, I prefer the brand. It could be like, oh, I also was checking out so-and-so, the other brand, right? But the authenticity is there. So I think from a social proof perspective, you can't really ignore that.
Not at all.
Yeah. Is there like a sweet spot where like below a certain number of reviews, it sort of doesn't ring true, and then all of a sudden you sort of pass a certain number of reviews and people are like, oh, it's got X number of reviews, I'm going to now trust in the reviews, right? Because I guess, you know, beyond thousands, you know, on Amazon, when it's thousands and thousands of reviews, like I really didn't need 5,000 reviews or ratings.
No.
But it seems like there must be a sweet spot. Is it different or is it pretty much the same?
I think it really depends on the product, but in my opinion, I think that sweet spot is like 100 and up, because that 100 people that's a lot of people showing their opinion, essentially, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, and depending on what that number is. And the thing is with a conversion rate, so say your rating is like a 3.0 to 3.49, and then you've gotten 50 reviews or 100 reviews, whatever, that is higher than that, and then it kind of boosts you to that 3.5 to like 3.9, that conversion rate is going to increase just by that jump by like 5 to like 8%. And then even more to when you get to that sweet spot of like the 4 to like 4.9, or 4.5, 4.9, that's another, obviously a big jump. But the big sweet spot for that is like the 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, because it's showing, one, that you do have less than that, but it's also showing that you do have more, but the conversion rate is going to be higher based on that sweet spot of that like mid to smaller 4.0 rating.
Yeah, so it's not just count of reviews, but it's the count of reviews and where you are on the scale. And so,
yeah, exactly.
So you have to sort of be managing both. So it sounds like a real reputation management challenge in some cases. If you're sort of not where you want to be, you need to deploy effort and energy to get where you want to be. And it could be improving your product, or it could just be, you know, trying to invite the right people to leave.
Exactly. And like once you're on the page too, like for me, especially like shopping online for product reviews, the breakdown is super important to show, of like how many 5 stars, how many 4, how many 3, 2, 1, you know, that's super, super important, and having that like predominantly on the page. But I will say that it's super important because consumers look way beyond just the star rating. They're going to look deeply into what people are reading, especially they're also going to be looking at photos and videos and the word, like those keywords that people are using. And for us, we have different like tags that our customers can use So then people can search by that to really get to a better experience for what they need. And then also a thing with that too is having the ability to have people search for, or like for like the team, like the brand team, to search for people in different clothing of your brand just by like searching it in the reviews, like with ResellerRatings, you can do that based on like our AI part of the tech. So it can be like women in Paris in black dress or something, you know, and then they can find a UGC of that, and then they can use that for like a New Year's Eve campaign or something, you know. So having that and thinking about really using your real models, and I say that in quotes because obviously everybody can be a model, but everybody there are people for a living, you know. But having like real people do it goes back to the authenticity. Like I'd rather see someone who I can relate to in an ad versus someone who I feel like so far removed from in an ad, which will help me then convert, even if it's like a TikTok ad that's talking about a product and showing the reviews, because I've seen that happen so much lately. And like one of our customers, like they do it all the time on their TikTok ads, and I love it because obviously it like shows us essentially, but it shows that it's like a real like female that is in this like workout gear that's just like talking about her favorite brand, and you feel that's like a friend. It's not just like an ad. And I feel how you do that and how you use UGC is super important. And I think my point of that too is I feel the lines get blurred a lot with influencer marketing and UGC. And I've seen that increase in confusion this past year, because people are, in my mind, UGC is like all organic. It's not like paid, you know, and people are hiring UGC content creators, but that, in my mind, that's an influencer because you're paying them. That's like, you know, so that's like I could go on for a long time about those two things, because I think both are incredibly, incredibly needed for brands, but it could get too excessive if there are 30 people doing the same vitamin chewy gummies that you hear, but then you're like, do people actually use these? You know, because if there's so many people talking about it the same way, you're like, that's like where it gets sticky. But that's where I would go to the product page and read the reviews of the people that aren't the influencers or things like that within the brand.
Right. We definitely don't want the big pile of sticky gummies, because then you're
No.
So do you recommend that platforms or that brands put in their terms of service that the UGC that gets uploaded, you know, has rights to be used in ads?
Yep. So we definitely recommend that. And I mean, especially because it could be used on their website. For like Zennings, for instance, or one of our other customers, Hammett, like they predominantly show the images of their customers on that site. And so that is something to consider when a consumer is posting a photo. And with that, if you think about it in the sense of more of the adult like products or adult brands, like one of them, we have like lingerie or like a bra company essentially that is a customer. And so that could be, you have to be very careful with that, which is why we have flaggers. And also we have that the AI bot can really tell that. But then also with another thing, and this might be like controversial, but with if like guns, like companies that have guns, they have product reviews. So like where does that go? And then also with that, it's like government wise and like what Google will show. So it's like really learning that for your brand, and also just being very honest with your consumers about it, just because especially on that side of it, especially with just everything going on in the world, it's super important to realize that and know the rules of, because Google's king essentially when it comes to things like that. You really have to like learn the rules, and also you have to learn how to adapt different asks to your your audience with it. Especially because like going back to not paying people or incentivizing them, because Google will they'll flag that, they'll know that, and you can get penalized, as like for us we can, and so can like the brand. And that's the thing that none of us want to happen, obviously.
Right. So are there any things that a lot of brands and marketers don't know about ratings and reviews that you sort of feel they should know? And so you want to take this time to sort of say, hey, don't forget about this, or some other things that they're just not familiar with?
Yeah, so I feel with our solution specifically, I'll be like very biased per se on it, but I know our competitors can do some of this as well. But really being able to analyze that shopper experience. It's not just about the ratings and reviews and just about the photos and just about the videos or unboxing and that, but you can really analyze their habits on your site. You can analyze the words, like I was talking about with like shipping, or if it's a packaging issue, or the packaging's great, or it's too much. Like if it's too much, then like that's a cost savings for you in the sense of paper. So really analyzing that full experience, the thing that within your ratings and reviews you can do. But then also creating or essentially controlling the path to purchase. And that is super important when it comes to conversion. And those two things I feel people don't think about essentially when it comes to ratings and reviews, because they just think it's just ratings and review, it's just stars, but really it's that full experience, and like what you can do with that data is so important. And then where you can like push it to, for instance, like with social media, how your like whole team can really be involved when it comes to like brand management and social media, your e-commerce team, like there's so many things that can help with that. And then with our product, what I love, I will say, is that, and a lot of people are surprised we have this on our product. But say, for instance, a customer or a brand has like 7,000 reviews with us. And then our competitors, they have like say it's like a 4.2 review and there's like 7,000 of them. And then the other review, like third party vendors, have like 2,000 and like a 2.3 and things that are like that. They have a way for us that they can like push the they can do like 40% of their reviews go to X competitor, 20% go to X competitor, so they can really help their brand be consistent across the board. Because I think that's also very important, because you can really tell who reviews certain ways and different platforms, but having it really consistent across the board. Obviously it's not going to be perfect. It's just not going to be. If you have it that way, kudos to you. But I want to learn your secrets. I'll have them on next. But I think it's super important to have that transparent view, just because even for me on the B2B side, I can like I look at like our ratings on G2 and I go to like Trust Radius and things like that. And the numbers are so much different. So like, that's why I'm like, okay, I want to focus on this one. And then even when I am evaluating tech, it's the same thing. It's like 10,000 reviews on like a G2, and then on another one there are like 1,000, and so it's like they're so big. But then for me, I really have to like think about that and see what people are saying, because there are different like minimum requirements for each of those, and some of them I go to the more longer form ones, because that shows me that holds more weight. It's kind of like comparing a blog to like a recipe or something, because it like gives you step by step what it is, but the blog can tell the story. And I'd rather have that story to really see like where I should buy, especially for B2B.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. You gave me an interesting idea for some of our customers who have, the outside box is generic, but then there's a box within the box. And so the unboxing is such a fun element, especially if it's an exciting product. So I'm thinking about bringing up the idea of putting sort of a sticker on it, or including a blow-in postcard or something like that, to encourage people to, chronicle their unboxing. With a QR code. And, exactly, with a QR code.
That's what we've been thinking on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because like I got this one water bottle. It was from a local coffee shop here, but it was like the company was called Welly, and it tells you about the story of the company, and then it tells you why different colors are named different colors, and that it's about basically this different this village in like a third world country. And I was like, the back of it just had like a barcode really, and like made in blah 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 blah, and I was like, this would be so cool for a QR code, to be in. And me and my CEO is going to listen to this and laugh, because he rolls his eyes whenever me and my CRO talk about QR codes, because he's like, he's like, no, because they came back, like they were here probably like 2007, 2008, and then they went away because COVID brought them back. So
yeah, absolutely. You couldn't order in a
great.
restaurant without them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's I think with QR code, it's so instant act, and that's a thing that I was going to recommend in the sense of the ratings and reviews, but you would have to decide if you want it on that specific product. Then you would have to like think about changing how, like, there'd be so many things on that, how you would do that. But I think even if it's like a mom and pop shop, or maybe, for instance, for me, I'm really passionate about those like smaller brands that are maybe on Etsy that have tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of reviews, that are trying to go to like their own like e-commerce shopping cart, and kind of having them, because I know they're mostly going to be packaging a lot of the stuff by themselves, or they have someone helping, but having those postcards in there, it's going to help those smaller brands so much. And I think that's super important, especially during like the holiday season, but all throughout the year, because you could essentially have like that postcard with the QR code, and then have another one in there that says like, oh, invite a friend to shop with us, and have that go a long way too.
Absolutely. So wearing your own marketing hat for your own business, what has you excited for next year, for 2023?
Yeah, I'm really excited. So we are actually in the midst of our rebrand, and we're going to be launching it next year. And I'm really excited about it. And it's really captivating the whole shopper experience, and kind of like what I talked through with analyzing the shopper experience. And instead of us talking about star ratings and ratings and reviews, and that's kind of what people will know us by, just because that's how we've talked about for so long, is tailoring that conversation in marketing wise and sales wise, and having the basis of our business on that education side. And I'm super excited to do that. And we have a lot of amazing smart people on our team that are just creating so many like video content pieces to help that. And I'm excited to push that along and launch. We're going to be launching a Google Shopping 101 certification program that I'm working with an agency on right now. And then and I kind of mentioned it a little bit, is the passion I have for like smaller Etsy shops that are doing really well, is doing a e-commerce launch plan for them, and giving them recommendations on whether that be like, if they don't have a shopping cart in mind, which ones that would recommend based on like their answers that they have like given to us in like a form fill, and kind of do a launch plan with a step-by-step, and then connections to the brands that we have like partnerships with. And then we give them business essentially too, but then also just helping a brand out and doing different campaigns like that, because I really want to get involved more with the customers and the prospects and talking to them, because I'm all about hearing their voices and listening to feedback. And even if it's someone who doesn't decide to go with us, using that for part of the campaign too, I think it'd be really interesting, and I'm excited for all of that to come.
Great. Well, it sounds like 2023 is going to be super busy and super exciting for you.
Yes.
So I look forward to watching you guys go through your relaunch, and to keeping in touch. Thanks so much for
Yes. Thank you, Kevin.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.